Adtech moves fast. Yesterday's innovation is today's warm-up act. Welcome to Legends of Adtech, the podcast where we go beyond the buzzwords and straight to the people at the cold face of digital adtech. Every 2 weeks, we sit down with the industry's boldest thinkers, pioneers and disruptors to find out how they're rewriting the game. This is their story.
Welcome back to Legends of Adtech, the podcast that uncovers the stories, the lessons, and the legends behind the industry. I'm Julia Linehan, the founder and CEO of The Digital Voice, and today's guest is someone who truly builds on the backbone of success. Annabelle Dudman is SVP of Commercial Excellence at Adform and is a true master of operations, process, and precision. From EY to Microsoft, Spotify, and PlayStation, Annabelle has spent her career transforming global organizations from the inside out. She's brilliantly combined her financial expertise with her passion for people and process and turned it into a superpower that drives commercial performance at scale. I love this phrase that Annabelle uses: it creates harmony from disorder. And in an industry that thrives on change, brackets chaos, she's done exactly that. She's led commercial teams, global teams, built structure that lasts, and championed the unsung heroes of AdTech operations. Welcome, Annabelle, to Legends of AdTech.
Thank you so much. What a wonderful and very kind introduction. Thank you very much.
All deserved. But you might not say that in a minute when I get you to do our challenge that we always give to our guests. So you've got to, in 60 seconds or less, tell us about yourself and how you got here, from qualifying at EY and Spotify and PlayStation and everything in between. Go for it.
Absolutely. So I started my career, as you said, in finance. I qualified as a chartered accountant at EY, and then I built a successful career in finance at Microsoft. And finance seemed like the perfect career for me, right? Because I'm very analytical, very data driven, I love structure. But I soon found that it wasn't enough for me. I actually wanted to drive more impact, be closer to the business, and I wanted to fix things rather than just in finance, you kind of point out issues, but you don't fix them. So I moved into operations at MSN and honestly never looked back. I found it's this ikigai concept of, you find something you love and something you're good at and something that can drive your career. And in the intersection of those, I found operations in AdTech and the fast pace, the people are amazing, and I've never looked back.
I love that. I mean, I was going to ask actually what made you trade up from finance to operation, but you've actually really succinctly answered it there. And I think it's a bold move. Is there an element that did you ever? I'm going to come on to good lessons and bad lessons, but is there anything you regret? I mean, our industry, the one downside is security. That it's a little bit in flux. Has there ever been a concern? Was there anything that you miss?
You know what? No, I think when I made that move to operations, and actually, I moved through that move to operations in MSN. And then when I was looking for my next role, I was thinking, oh, shall I go back to finance? I feel a bit scared leaving because Microsoft, this amazing company, amazing company. And I felt scared leaving the security of this big corporate. And I thought, shall I go back to finance? Because it's too much. And I didn't, and I don't regret it. I never look back because I just love to fix things, honestly, and I love to drive impact. And in finance, you can only go so far. And so I actually don't regret it, but nor do I regret starting my career in finance. And I've found that I've used my financial background in every role that I've done since. It really helps in operations to have that level of clarity on objectivity, being data driven. So I love that I have that finance background, and I love that I'm using it in my operations career.
It's been good. It's always interesting, isn't it? I think whatever position you have in your career, you've got to see it as the building blocks, and you take forward what's good and leave behind what's bad. So there's an interesting one in that. You've experienced and worked at some of the big global names like Microsoft and EY, and then you're working at the brilliant team that is Adform. What's the biggest lessons, good and bad, that you've taken from each?
Well, Microsoft was amazing, and it's perhaps a little bit different, but when I was there, it was very data driven, analytical culture driven by Bill Gates. And of course, because I am analytical and data driven, it was perfect for me. And I learned that sort of culture of the drive for high performance, it's about doing your best and being the best. And I took that away from Microsoft. When I moved to Spotify, it was really bringing in, it was an early adopter of agile culture, both within engineering and product development, but it went across the whole organization. And I found that some of the lessons I had learned from Microsoft, I was a little bit, oh gosh, in an operations world, I'm here to bring structure and process. But there's this agile environment, and that's one of the most important lessons that I learned in operations, which is that you have to balance the structure and the process with the need to innovate. And therefore you need to have some agility, because without innovation, right, particularly in ad tech, we're so fast paced, you have to keep moving and keep changing. So that was a very important lesson that I learned at Spotify. So it's that I learned how to do it well at Microsoft, but also how to balance it at Spotify. And now at Adform, gosh, I'm learning and keeping all of those things together, along with what I love at Adform. It's that people-centered culture that we have, which puts people at the heart. So you have the high performance culture, you have the drive, the fast pace, the innovation, but also that sort of very much people centered. And I just love working at Adform for those reasons.
Do you know what? And I know I really wanted you to come on Legends of Adtech for numerous reasons, Annabelle. But one of them, when we first met years and years ago at Digital Leading Ladies Lunch, and we were talking about operations, and I've always believed, and I used to run sales and operations teams back in the 90s, and I've always had absolute respect. I remember actually having some. I've always believed as a leader, you need to know at least a little bit of the tech that your teams are using. So I used to be able to do actual ad delivery and be able to run ad campaigns a tiny bit. Like, it's a bit like my coding. I can do it a tiny bit, but not a lot. But I think it's the backbone, and we wanted you on here to kind of almost celebrate. And I could hear it in your voice there, the passion for operations. But here's a question that, like, as a leader now, how can we try and get more people to see what you see and come on board?
I guess two things. One, I think for me individually, is about role modeling operations and being sort of loud and proud about who I am and why it's important within a strong team to have the quiet, usually we are quite quiet, a little bit behind the scenes, because we take our time, we're curious, and we look into the details. But it's the second thing is it's about teamwork. So it's really interesting you said that, Julia, about that. I didn't know that you used to run operations teams back in the day. And every excellent commercial sales leader that I've worked with understands the importance of operations. I mean, it's that it comes with the package. Without great salespeople, you don't make revenue. But unless you have great operations people, the revenue doesn't come, it doesn't get delivered, the customer needs are not met. So you have to bring the two together. So for me, it's about shouting about the collaboration and the teamwork across sales and operations, because that's where the magic happens.
So you mentioned as well there, Annabelle, you said it's often operations are maybe a little bit quieter. And that's a funny thing, because I'm a born bred salesperson, but I equally, and that's why it was funny, the different personalities on sales and operations. But is there personality traits that make somebody successful in operations, or is it a mindset, or is it pure play skills?
Gosh, I think there is a little bit of a mindset. I think in operations, you have to really care about doing the right things and doing the right things right. So I think that it's the balance of speed but also accuracy. And I find like the best salespeople, they just want to move fast and move on to the next thing. And that's right if you're in sales. But if you're in operations, if you move too fast, you miss the details, and that's where things go wrong. So I think for an operations person, you have to have a love for an attention to detail. because if you don't, you're going to miss things and then things are going to go wrong.
Yeah, that's probably again why shouldn't work in operations. I can do everything super fast, but I wouldn't say it's attention to detail. So that's why I make sure I've got the right people around to do that element. And that's then another question. So we talked about the personality of the individual, but what makes the best run ops teams? What do they have in common?
You got to have each other's backs, right? It's all about teamwork. And sometimes it's tough, right? Because, things do go wrong sometimes. And then it can be a little bit challenging. You have to turn things around, fix things very fast. You can have people perhaps being a little bit angry with you sometimes, and often that's not fair, but it's just life because people get frustrated. So you've got to have a little bit of humor. You've got to really lean into collaboration and teamwork. And actually, the best ops teams that I've ever worked with have been very funny and really good at the teamwork. I think you just got to channel that.
Here's a question for you. I remember this is really bad, and I want to know if this is still happening. As salespeople, we'd close the deal at 5 o'clock Friday, right? Really excited. Fuck off to the pub and then leave the ops teams going, well, this has got to go live. It starts Monday. And the poor ops teams would have to sit there. And in the end, I put a ban on it as a sales leader, also saying, if you haven't closed it by 3, it doesn't run till late on Monday to give that chance that you don't book something with a promise of it starting 8 a.m. Is that still happening? Does the team still go, it's 5 o'clock, go on, something's gone live?
Sometimes, yes, it does. But again, and I think particularly as a leader, what in those circumstances, good ops people will always do the right thing. They will stay late to make it happen. And that is just forever grateful for all the wonderful people in my team over the years, because they do that because they care.
Yeah, they give a damn, don't they?
Yes, but then as a leader, it's, my responsibility, any leader's responsibility, to go back to that sales team and explain why that's not the right thing to do. And hopefully they then are like yourself, Julia, which puts a stop to it. And again, it comes back to the best commercial leaders understand the partnership, and they know that they need to put some boundaries around to make sure that it really stays a good collaboration and teamwork.
Well, is that why because obviously you've got a brilliant job title, Commercial Excellence. Go on, Annabelle, love that. And there's actually no mention of operations in there. It's about commercial excellence, which I love. So 2 questions. Who came up with the job title? And number 2, what does your job look, what does your day-to-day look like?
What does it mean?
And was it Phil that came up with it?
No, it wasn't Phil that came up with that. I think it was my boss, who's the COO, Ollie Witten.
Oh, God, I love Ollie. Okay, then that explains it.
So, gosh, my job is so varied, which I love. So it cuts across the whole customer journey and the customer life cycle. So my team looks at everything from lead management, sales pipeline, closing deals, to onboarding customers, to retaining our customers. And so, but we are supporting the teams on the front line, helping them be more productive, more efficient, so that they can spend more time on and with their long-term profitable customers. So if I think about, there is no average day, but if I think about some of the projects I've been, involved with in the last couple of weeks, it has ranged from working with product and legal to make sure that our sales contractual processes are going to work for a new product launch that's coming soon. It could be looking at customer feedback, NPS feedback. It could be looking at the progress of, we're currently centralizing our smallest, our bronze tier of customers into our amazing operations team in Lithuania. So I'm involved in helping make sure that works well. And then I'm also looking at how we can optimize customers that come in on a trial basis, how we can, encourage and optimize more of them to convert to long-term customers. So, gosh, it really is very varied. And the word operations isn't in there, but honestly, operations is at the heart of what we do, and it will always be at the heart of what I do.
Well, hopefully my next question actually, because I'm always intrigued by this, hopefully it won't relate to anything you're working on currently. But when I started, I said about your phrase, harmony from disorder. How have you turned it? What situation, and what's the most chaotic situation you've turned around? And as I said, I hope it's not one of the ones you're just working on at the moment.
No, I will, I will give an example because that was a few years ago now, and it was where I made this quite, I think, important discovery, which is that when you have the worst, let's say, most chaotic situations, and the worst ones are where there's deep conflict within teams, because you can have chaos and then everybody kind of mucks in and, they get the job done. When you have chaos and conflict, that is a very difficult situation. And it was there was a European pan-European team working across three individual large European markets, and the teams had to collaborate to get the job done to deliver to our customers. And there was one team where everything worked brilliantly. They made loads of money. Customers were happy. The other two, complete chaos and tears. There were tears. People were very angry and upset, and things were going wrong. So then the leadership belief was that the issue was because of individuals. Somebody was difficult to work with, uncollaborative. I'm very curious by nature, and I didn't buy that as an explanation. So I went and I interviewed all the people. I got feedback on what was happening from both sides of the team, multiple markets. I asked them to tell me what the process was that they were following. And this was my realization that it was because there was a total lack of alignment and clarity on roles and responsibilities. And the conflict was because you had people who really cared about doing the right thing and delivering for their customers, but it wasn't working because person A thought person B should be doing something and person B thought person C should be doing something. And the tears and the arguments were not the cause, they were a symptom of a lack of alignment. And so this was quite an important lesson for me, which is don't jump to conclusions.
Yeah.
Don't jump to think it's an individual that's the cause of the issue. Look for the bigger picture and look for the deeper cause. And quite often it's something as simple as, or as complicated as, lack of clarity on who's accountable and who's responsible for what across the customer journey. And I have then brought that into every role that I've done since then. And actually at Adform, I introduced the game-changing commercial culture, which is across the whole commercial team, which is making sure that we can be truly customer-centric, that we can be really data-driven in our decisions so that we make the right decisions faster, so that we can be truly global, but also optimizing for local. And one of the cool things that we've done as part of that is introduce avatars for each of our key commercial roles. So that's country manager, sales, account manager, solutions consultants, so that people can be super clear on what excellence looks like for their role, but very, very importantly, what they can expect their teammates to deliver for them. And that's when you can create, that's sort of like when the magic happens. Everybody understands everybody's role, and then they're all aligned. And then, if you have great people, as we do in Adform, then we know that we will create great outcomes for our customers.
Do you know what, as well, what I'm hearing there, and what I really hope is that when you solved that chaotic situation, that a lot of people stayed. And I think there's a question I want to ask you, which is because I think in a lot of your roles, you've stayed, you've got longevity in each of your roles. What do you think would be the advice on how people can build and how they can stay in the industry? And is it as small as, I love that word curious all the time. I'm so pro be curious. But equally, I think you're right, not jumping into conclusions, not and just stepping back in order to see, well, what's the reason I'm upset, or what's the reason this isn't working? Is there something I can do? Is there something influence what can be done? But what would you give as advice? How to stay? How do you stay put? How do you keep your job?
Well, I think from a career perspective, you have to know who you are and you have to know what you're good at, and then you have to be true to that. So, I mean, I stayed at Microsoft for such a long time because I found that I was able to continue to grow my career in directions that I found interesting, where I was still learning. But at the point that you've that's no longer happening, you have to leave, right? You can't stay. Well, you can stay, of course, but if you want to keep growing your
But you're
career.
coasting. You're back in the comfort zone, isn't it? I always think you go that you're in the comfort zone, fear zone, grow zone. So you've got to get through. The fear zone is I've got to move or I've got to change in order to grow again. It doesn't have to be leave a company, but it's certainly got to be do something scary that allows you to grow. Would that be fair?
That is so true. And when I left Microsoft and went to Spotify, one of the scary parts of that was it was my first global role. And so I was responsible for the US as well as Europe and Asia. And that was scary. I was like, I know, I can't do that job. And I remember, my a good mentor and friend of mine at the time said, "Yes, you can do it, Annabelle, but you have to step up and step into it." So, but yeah, you have to do things that are a little bit scary. So I think the other thing I would say is don't be afraid of parallel moves to grow your career.
Interesting.
Careers, you might want there to be a diagonal line in terms of your career. It's very unusual that that's going to be the case. You're going to have little sort of movements where it's like this and up and down or whatever. Maybe not down, but sort of like this, a little bit of a squiggle. And I embrace that, because embrace the learning. But it's also for you to learn more about yourself and keep making sure that you are in the right place for you and growing.
I was trying to explain to people that it's like it is a staircase, but imagine it with very, very deep treads. So you step up, but then you've got to keep moving forward at that level before you can step up again. I think people are very eager to keep going, jumping up the little tiny stairs. It's a very long, it's like a pathway to the next step. I always find that I think people need to not think it's just a steep trajectory, because it's going to be disappointing, and we see that in the industry.
Yes, I totally agree.
So here's a couple of questions for you. And one of them, the first one is around, I love to look around me left and right and go, what in ad tech needs an overhaul? So I'm going to ask you what in ad ops maybe needs a little cheeky overhaul going into throughout next year.
Well, I'm going to answer it a little bit differently because of AI. So AI is here, but we ain't seen nothing yet. And so, ops is going to be overhauled, whether we are there at the forefront driving that change or whether we're a little bit scared and not driving the change. So I think for operations, we are right at the forefront of being able to use AI to make the operations life cycle, to make everything better and more efficient. And it's actually quite an opportunity, but also quite a significant challenge for us in operations. And I think I talked about this a little bit before, because in operations, you look to kind of streamline and create structure and process. But with AI, we have to embrace empowerment of teams to innovate, particularly because if I think about myself, I'm a Gen X. When I when I was growing up, there were no mobile phones. I didn't use a computer when I was a kid, right?
No.
It was only when I started work. So that innovation has to be driven, I think, so much by the Gen Z generation. And so as operations leaders, we have to embrace the innovation, but we have to find that way to balance that with governance, with the structure and the control that helps to make sure that we are still, complying with all our legal regulations, et cetera, we're not putting the company at risk. So it's almost like that ops overhaul, it's going to happen anyway. And let's be at the forefront of it, because I think it's a real opportunity for operations. It's also a little bit of a challenge and something that I'm actually talking to my leadership team about, which is how do we combine the two in the best way.
So that's that's great, because that's a broad view on what's going to happen. If I had to put you under the spotlight of picking one operational trend that will have the biggest impact on ad tech growth in 2026, what would it be?
What I have in my mind and what's front and present for me within the things that I'm planning within Adform is about implementing AI agents on top of all of the wonderful documentation that we have within all of our processes and all of the operational processes, because one of the biggest challenges we have in operations is that we have all this beautiful documentation and training, and people either don't go there, they don't, or they go there and they can't find the answer. And my brain works differently from someone else's brain. It's hard to find the answer that they're looking for in a quick and efficient way. So I think there's really a massive opportunity to put an agent on top of all of that documentation and very quickly, just make a much better, more streamlined experience for, all of our salespeople across the globe. So that's the thing that I'm most excited about and planning to do next year. And the other thing that I think is really, that makes it quite exciting with AI is because I think it does give operations the opportunity to be seen as leaders in innovation. And this is not perhaps where we don't usually sit in that area where people would see us as being leading operations, leading innovation within the organization.
So do you think that's the switch? Because we started this conversation with that phrase, ad operations, unsung hero. In fact, any operational role is unsung hero. Do you think that's what's going to make the difference to switch it up, to get operations front and center?
Yeah, actually, that's a really good point. I think it gives us the opportunity to show more of what we can do and really demonstrate the importance of that partnership. Because I think, operations can have a little bit, I think by people who are not in operations can have perhaps an old-fashioned idea of what operations do, is being a little bit, perhaps stuck in the world of 15, 20 years ago. You can't succeed in operations these days without being innovative, without, really empowering local teams, without making sure that you're working in partnership with the commercial organization. And I think AI gives us the perfect opportunity to be a little bit more in the front and center.
There's so much good stuff that you said there. I've got one last quick question before the very final quick fire round, and that's, we've obviously met through the Digital Leading Ladies. It's how we met years ago, and I'm a massive fan of community groups. Just is there more that can be done for community groups specifically for operations, and are there any that's worth calling out to join that you'd go?
My answer is yes, and actually I am not part of a specific operations community group, and so this is my opportunity to say, please, if you're out there, I would love to hear about you and join and participate. I also love the Digital Leading Ladies because it helps me to stay connected with such a wide diversity of leaders, and make sure that I'm abreast of all the latest challenges and issues around the industry, and it's very thought-provoking. And I will always say that the sisterhood, my network of people I know and have worked with and I rely on, that is the key thing for me, actually, is just keep me sane.
Well, it was one of the DLL that we had on season 1 that recommended you to Legends of Adtech, so you've got that to thank. By the way, have a look at Beela, the Beela Tech ad operations groups. It's amazing. Love what Rob and Melissa are doing, and they've got a really good group for operations, so have a look at that. Right. Final bit, it's quick fire round. You have to answer the first thing that comes in your head in kind of one sentence, ideally. Are you ready, Annabelle Dudman?
Yes.
Go, let's go. What's one skill every future leader in ad tech needs?
Agility. Change is coming, change is fast. We've got to stay agile.
Perfect. What's your favorite preferred tool, spreadsheet or AI assistants?
I love this question because early in my career, I was known as the queen of spreadsheets, and Excel is my happy place. But can I answer and say both? Because I can never give up Excel, but I think you put AI on top and it helps simplify what can be quite complex.
I love that you're called Queen of Spreadsheets. Cameron, the creative and events director, is also a Queen of Spreadsheets, and she's got a mug on it now, a little mug with it on. It's brilliant.
Oh,
But Annabelle, what's the best thing about leading global teams?
I love the diversity, different perspectives. And yes, it's diversity in the workplace, but it's also, I'm a bit of a geek when it comes to history and culture, and I love learning about different, I have a large team in Lithuania, and I love learning about Lithuania. It's an amazing country. So
Never been, but would love to. Annabelle, something about yourself that people would be surprised to know about you.
I was Sting's tour accountant on the 10 Summoner's Tales tour in the 1990s.
Wow, I love that. Brilliant. Another area you'd be happy to move into if you had to leave RevOps.
Oh, I don't want to leave RevOps, but HR.
Interesting.
HR, I'm actually very inspired by our Chief People Officer at Adform, Charlotta, and she uses her psychology training to really help shape the culture of the organization. And I find that very inspiring.
Watch this space. Annabelle's coming HR way. Best career advice you've ever received?
Work hard, do well at your job, and the opportunities will come.
Beautiful. Final question. Who would you like to see on Legends of Adtech?
Oh my goodness. Jana Eisenstein.
I know Yana. Lovely. Okay.
I love Jana. She is so smart, and I'm in awe of Jana, and she's a really great people-centered leader as well.
Amazing. Thank you. You survived the quickfire round. Thank you, Annabelle.
I did. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. And that's a wrap for Legends of Adtech. Just a quick, really summary of the main points. And Annabelle said so much good stuff there. But I think it's ops is changing, but ops is also leading that change, and is going to be right at the forefront of it. For people working in operations or RevOps or whatever it is, be willing to take that scary leap and push yourself within your career. It is possible to then continue to move up and learn all the time. Be curious. And AI is kind of a perfect opportunity for the ad operations, for the backbone of our industry, to actually just lead and show us how it's done. So there was so much I could have gone on to, but that's the takeaways. And if you'd like to connect with Annabelle, check out the links in the description. And if you're wondering what just happened or what is happening in AdTech, head on over to adtechjuice.com to help decoding our industry. If you've enjoyed today's conversation, don't forget to rate, review, share the episode, and of course, be sure to follow us to not miss a single episode. Until next time, I'm Julia Linehan. Keep it juicy.
You've been listening to Legends of Adtech, a podcast by Adtech Juice. New episodes drop every 2 weeks, bringing you closer to the pioneers, disruptors, and game changers shaping the future of digital advertising. Stay connected at adtechjuice.com. and be sure to follow us on LinkedIn for even more industry know-how.